Hey, board gamers. BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with episode number 28 of Gumbo Live. Board Game Gumbo Live is the number one Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Well, that's because we're still the only Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming. But tonight we got a special guest. I've got Mark from Kolossal Games. Hopefully, I've got Mark here online.
Yes,
Mark?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Yeah, I can hear you now. Mark's here to talk about their new project, Western Legends. Don't forget, Gumbo Live is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Punchboard Media is, check out the other fine members like the Cardboard Horde. Eric reviews all of the latest, hottest games each week, so don't miss his posts. Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table. Mark, a couple of show notes before we begin. Number one, Board Game Gumbo Live is the number one Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Did you know that?
I did not.
That's because we're the only Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming.
Hey, that's an easy way to be number one. Congrats.
We're still holding on to that mantle. A couple of show notes. Hit us up on social media tonight, Twitter at Board Game Gumbo, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Board Game Gumbo. But enough chatter. Let's get to our guest, Mark Burke, the Chubby Meeple. Although, Mark, you don't look as chubby, man. I was expecting somebody a lot chubbier.
Well, the camera's got me from the neck up.
So. It's got that great view, just like me. You don't want to see what's going on behind there. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Mark, elevator pitch. Tell me who you are. Tell the audience who you are. And what is Kolossal Games?
Yes. Online, I'm known as the Chubby Meeple. I got my start doing blogs and video for the Dice Tower Network as a video contributor, doing some reviews. There, I joined the Kolossal team shortly after the company announcement was made at Origins back here this past year in 2017. Came on board as the social media or community manager there, so I handle the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the Kickstarter campaign that we're running right now. Doing a lot of that and moderating all of those places, moderating the BGG page for Kolossal and all of our games. So there's a lot going on. Kolossal is a brand new publisher. Like I said, the company was just announced at Origins this year in 2017, and first game is on Kickstarter now. Western Legends. We've got about 5 days left in that campaign. But is the kind of the brainchild of Travis Chance, who formerly founded Action Phase Games with a couple other folks. And when Action Phase got bought by Indie Boards and Cards, he transitioned into a bit of a marketing role with them, worked there for about a year before deciding he wanted to get back into game development, where his passion lies and really where his talent is, where he really shines. So he popped in, got Kolossal started up off the ground, started signing games, and here we are today with Western Legends.
Yeah, I actually worked with Travis over at PAX South 2017, about a year ago. He was still with Indie Boards and Cards, and I was doing some envoy work as a herald, doing demos for some of the games over there. Kodama, I think, was the big game that he was pushing back then. So
Kodama's big one.
I got to see Travis in action. That guy is a bundle of energy and a bundle of knowledge, man. I mean, he has forgotten more about game development than I'll ever know.
You're absolutely right about that. He is. I always joke around and say that, just you wouldn't expect it, but when he starts talking, he's got an incredibly brilliant mind. Especially when he starts talking game development, the passion just oozes off of him. And you're absolutely right. He's a ball of energy.
Man, I would see him. I would see him sitting there on his phone, and he was like playing a game or something. Things were quiet, and then somebody would come up, and it was a ninja game that Mina from Mina's Fresh Cardboard was demoing for Travis. I forgot what it was. She had to step out, and somebody asked, "What's that?"
I bet it was Ninja Camp.
Ninja Camp, that's it. So Mina stepped out, and Travis was there, and he was on his phone, and then some people came up, and I saw him flip a switch, man. And I mean, he has the whole persona, and he's like, come in, let me show you the game. I mean, he did such a picture-perfect pitch. But, hey, this is a live show, Mark, and we've got questions already for you, man. So if you don't mind, I'm going to get to some of the questions. Yeah. So Jonathan Causey is checking in. Jonathan, thank you for watching the show. He says, I've got a question for Kolossal. I noticed a lack of trains in Western Legends, which seems like such a missed opportunity. Will trains get incorporated into the game somehow in the future? That being said, the game looks amazing, and I've already backed. Hey, great. Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Thanks for the question, for supporting us as well. Yes, trains is something that we are exploring. We have a lot of ideas. I mean, the Wild West is a very underutilized theme in the board gaming world, sadly. And with the success we've seen so far with Western Legends, and that we're going to continue to see, it's going to be, we've got plans for expansions, and one of those things being trains. Now, whether that's a train robbery, worth tossing around an idea of maybe a second board and being able to use the rail station that's on our current board to travel to the rail station on the new board, so you can travel between the boards with the rail.
Ooh.
I would completely imagine that if there is a train, there will be a way to rob it, just because that's something incredibly thematic in the Wild West. So yeah, we are kicking the train idea around along with some other things, and looking forward to where this game is going to go in the future, because this is certainly I would highly doubt this is the end of Western Legends with all of the other ideas that we've been kicking around.
Sure. Hey, Brian Baker is checking in, also watching the show. He says, looking forward to the interview. He says your audio is a little quiet, so if maybe you could get up closer to the microphone and adjust that. So thank you, Brian, for checking in on the show and for giving us a tip on the audio.
Yeah.
It sounds fun on my end. Oh, that sounds, I actually, now I hear what he's talking about. That sounds really good.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
Hey, Mark, so we're going to get to Western Legends in a little while, and I want to do a full segment on it. But before that, I'd like to chat with you a little bit about your gaming. One of the things that I saw, and I couldn't believe, do you speak Italian?
It's kind of funny. I dabbled in it a little bit years ago. I had a couple of people that were in my life at the time that were from Italy, and actually spoke English as a second language.
Wow.
And so I was picking up some Italian from them. I don't really speak it much now. I probably, your typical thank you, hello, I could probably do, but beyond that, no, not fluid by any stretch of the imagination, even back then.
And you probably know why I'm asking. I saw that you had done some rules work or some publishing work for a game that came out on the Italian English translation. And I said, how would Mark do that?
Yeah, I did some work for GeoChicks as an Italian publisher,
Sure.
on one of their latest Kickstarters, Sawin. And I was approached to help out. They literally reached out to a bunch of Dice Tower folks and said they were looking for some assistance with Italian to English translation. And their pitch was that they could do the Italian to the English. What they wanted was kind of a 2.0. They wanted an English speaker to then go through their newly translated Italian to English and clean up the grammar. So I didn't do any Italian to English translation. I just basically took their English translation and cleaned it up so that it read like English.
Part of the Dice Tower. Have you ever been to Dice Tower Con?
I have not. I will be there. Well, I'm planning to be there this year, though, in 2018, because I've heard it's just a phenomenal convention. I mean, everybody says it's the one to go to if you want to play games. And I've become friends with a lot of the Dice Tower contributors. The regular guys that you see, Tom, Sam, Z, Eric, become friends there. But even some of the other contributors that you may not know as common. So, guys like Robert Geislinger, the Blue Player,
right.
And Mark Reed of Board Game Corner, hung out a lot with Dean Leggett and Graham Anderson at Grand Con back in November. So it's kind of making those friendships through the Dice Tower Network, and I think just being able to go down and hang out with those guys and the women as well, Mandy and Suzanne, are also really good friends of mine as well. I think it'd be a great opportunity to sit down, play some games with them, and just have a good time and enjoy the gaming life.
I know you've been to Gen Con. Dice Tower Con is nothing like that. It's so slow, and it's so there's so many games, and there's so much chance to just visit with people. Like you said, getting to hang out with Robert or Brant Sanderson. I think it's Sanderson, right? Brant was one of the guys that I got to meet. We had done some work on the Dice Tower Awards, but had never actually met. We just talked on Twitter and by the Slack feed. So it was nice putting a face to name, hanging out with him for a while. I tell everybody, if you get a chance to go to a BGG or go to a Dice Tower Con, sure, Gen Con is amazing, and it's the best place to do the shopping. But if you really want to play games and meet people, that's the way to go. Get to one of those type of conventions.
Absolutely, and I would even say the same thing as of Origins.
Okay.
Origins is a convention that you still have a little bit of the spectacle of Gen Con because publishers are still making game announcements. They're still releasing games at Origins. It's becoming more prevalent that publishers are saying this is our Origins release, when before you just heard Gen Con release, Essen release. But Origins is great because when the exhibit hall shuts down at 6 in the evening, all of those celebrities and personalities within the industry, the designers, the publishers, the media folks, all sit down and play games together. I gamed a lot with the Dice Tower folks. I helped work at their booth this past Origins, did some volunteer with them. And then after hours, we would sit down and play games either in the booth or sometimes we'd go back to a hotel and play. There, I did some stuff on the Origins live show as part of their game show and had a good time there. So Origins is another great one that you still get some of the spectacle and some of the excitement and still that rush of I need to get to this booth first because I want to grab this game, but it's not nearly the madness that Gen Con is.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with another episode of Gumbo Live, episode 28. I have Mark Burke from Kolossal Games. He's the Chubby Meeple. He's going to be talking about Western Legends. But before we get to that, we got a guy that helps me out with the show each and every week, Steve O'Rourke, the name father from the Dukes of Dice. He's checking in and says, hey, enjoying the show, Mark and BJ. Excited for the discussion of Western Legends. Really looks amazing. And Mark, I actually downloaded some of the pictures, and we're going to show those for the viewers so that you and I can walk through. But before we get to that, Travis Chance was at Dice Tower Con and handed me one of his very first Kolossal Games cards. He was like, look, I'm starting this company. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff. And one of the cool rumors that I've heard, and if you're free to talk, this show is live and all about scoops. Travis mentioned something the other day about a potential top 10 game on BGG that Kolossal Games is going to be reprinting. Are you guys free to talk about that now? Because I've got some guesses.
I can't officially say anything. He is correct that we are looking at doing a republishing or a partnership with a potential top 10 BGG game. It's exciting. We're really looking forward to it. Nothing's been formally announced, so I can't speak specifics. But yeah, there is definitely something coming on the horizon that we're all super psyched about. Not only is it a top 10 BGG game, but it's one of my favorites as well. So to be able to actually work on the project would be amazing.
Come on, Steve wants to know, breaking news. So I'll throw out a couple of names and you don't have to say anything, but Patrick Hillier suggested maybe it's COB, maybe Castles of Burgundy out there, which,
That's a solid game. Can I answer everyone with I can neither confirm nor deny the room?
I want to see how good of a poker player you are. Jake from the Draft Mechanics suggested everybody's favorite Agricola. Mayfair hasn't. Yeah, Agricola came out a couple of years ago with a reprint, and it's been a while. Maybe the stock is getting low, and Travis wants to put that out, but you can probably neither confirm nor deny, I guess.
Correct. Neither confirm nor deny.
All right, well, I'm going to move on. You're a good poker player. Maybe I can soften you up a little bit with some other questions. So, hey, you've been to Gen Con. You were there for Gen Con 50, right?
Yeah, I sure was.
What's the best game you've played since Gen Con 50 and why?
Since Gen Con 50. Oh, wow.
Either at Gen Con or since then.
I would say there are quite a few that stand out. Really enjoy Dinosaur Island a lot.
Yes.
That is a fantastic game. The design there, John Gilmore, Brian Lewis, you knocked it out of the park. It's fantastic at all player counts. Even has a really solid solo mode, which a lot of games you can't say that about. And John Wasteland Express Delivery Service, another solid title that I've played quite a few times since Gen Con 50. And then if we go kind of smaller scale games, I would have to say I've really been enjoying plays of Custom Heroes from AEG. It takes the card crafting that everybody learned in Mystic Vale and steps it up to me as a better game than Mystic Vale. I enjoy it. It's a quick playing little game. Being able to build and craft these cards that are super powerful, but now everything got shuffled and redealt, and now my opponent has that powerful card that I just built. It's got a really cool dynamic to it, so been having a lot of fun with that. And then I'm doing a lot of party games, so played this past weekend I played some Insider. Insider's a fun game we like to go to and fall back on. Cash and Guns is another one. It's an oldie but a goodie. Usually hits the table a lot. So I would say if I had to pick just one of those, though, I'd probably give the nod to Dinosaur Island.
I got to try Dinosaur Island a couple of weeks ago. We played it a 4-player. I enjoyed it. I'd like to play it again. It's one of those games where the first time although it's not a hard game, there's just a lot going on in each of the different stages, and trying to put together the 4 stages, I felt like I needed one more play because the first one was more just trying to work out the kinks. Did you get the same feeling?
I did, yeah. The first play, as with any game, your first play is kind of bumpy because you're trying to figure out the strategies and what works well with what and how to piece things together and chain things together with combos and such. That was definitely the case with this, but it was definitely a game that when I got to the end of it, I wanted to do it again because you know I had some ideas that, oh, well, what if I did this next time? And so I already had some new things that I wanted to try and wanted to dive back into. I still, as much as I've played it, I still have yet to win a game of it. So the fact that I keep wanting to go back to it, even though I'm losing repeatedly, I think speaks a lot to the game itself and the design and just how much fun it is to actually play. It's a really solid design.
Absolutely. Hey, so one of the other things that Travis talked about in a recent podcast was a potential deal, a co-publishing deal with another publisher. Is that something that's not ready, or is that something related to the topic we were already talking about, or is it something separate? And if it's not ready, I understand if you guys can't talk about it.
Yep, that is something that's separate. We're actually, the last I knew, we were in the process of finalizing that.
Okay.
But that's going to be another really exciting project because we're going to be getting to work with a publisher and a designer that we all really adore his or her designs.
Wow. Steve, I knew we could soften him up. We're this close.
I'm a rock, BJ.
All right. You stick with that. BJ from Board Game Gumbo here on Gumbo Live, talking with my guest, Mark Burke from Kolossal Games. Kolossal Games has a fantastic project out on Kickstarter. Steve says cagey. He's a tough nut to crack, but we're going to keep working on it. And Steve, you're welcome to throw out some of those questions because he'll try his best to answer them. But the game that we want to talk about, BJ from Board Game Gumbo Live, talking about Western Legends from Kolossal Games. It's out on Kickstarter. I've got Mark Burke here, who's the social media manager, correct, for Kolossal?
Yes, that's correct. Community manager.
Yeah. Community manager. Let me throw up a picture here. I think that's the cover of Western.
Yep, that is correct. That is the box art for Western Legends.
Mark, you still there?
Yep.
Okay.
Still here.
I was trying to see if you can see that Western Legends there.
Yeah, there it is. Yep, that is the box cover.
All right, so give us the elevator pitch. What is Western Legends, and why should people be interested in it?
Yeah, Western Legends, obviously from the name, as the name implies, it's set in the Wild West, the late 1800s. And so it's an open world sandbox game, which those terms are generally used when you're describing video games. Open world sandbox game that for 2 to 6 players plays in 90 minutes or less. And in the game, you're taking on the role of an actual historical figure. So someone like Billy the Kid or Doc Holliday or Calamity Jane, Annie Oakley. You even have some characters that are, lesser known characters like Bass Reeves or Stagecoach Mary Fields, that were all characters in the history or folks in the history. But you may not have heard of them because, as I jokingly say, Val Kilmer didn't play them in a movie. So you get to take on the role of one of these characters, and you basically build up their legendary status however you see fit. You can make them break the law, rob banks, rob other players, rustle cattle, and climb up the wanted track, which earns points really quickly. Or you can uphold the law as a martial player and arrest those wanted players or wrangle cattle legally. Take bandits off the board that are running the NPC bandit characters and knock them out of the game. So you have the ability to climb either track, one or the other. So it's a really balanced wanted versus martial player. So there's a lot of player interaction that goes on. The wanted players are generally setting the pace of the game because they're scoring points at the end of every single turn based on how wanted they are. So it's really up to the martial players to step in and arrest them, make them, knock them off of that wanted track so they're not earning points anymore, and kind of making them have to take an extra step to, begin earning points either in a different way, or maybe they want to jump right back on that wanted track again and go back to their life of crime.
Yeah, I threw up a picture. I don't know if you can see it right now. I threw a picture of one of the characters you were talking about. Yeah. Stagecoach Mary Fields.
Yes, Stagecoach Mary has become one of our favorites. She, when we were looking at the characters that we had a few women that were in the game. We knew we wanted some more, so we started doing some research as to other women that were, everybody knows Calamity Jane, Annie Oakley. Those are names that are fairly household. But we wanted someone who was maybe lesser known, so we started doing some research, and we ran across Stagecoach Mary, who was an African-American woman. She worked for the Postal Service, was actually given a dedicated route, which is something that didn't happen very often back then. It only was something that was done with the best of the best. Um, the kind of the best of the best out there was you got an assigned route, you ran the route, and she did that for quite a long time, delivering mail back and forth, going back and forth to it's kind of like an orphanage, if you will, delivering there, and actually did some work there as well. So and then she was a kind of a towering woman as well. She was large in terms of stature, so very strong, very muscular. And she, there's a legend that at her local saloon, she had a standing bet that she could knock out any cowboy in the place. and
Oh, wow.
you know, she basically said, if I try and I can't do it, then you know your drink's on me. And there were four people that took her up on the bet, and all of them lost. All of them were knocked to the floor. There was also a standing legend. It's been uncorroborated, but there's legend that during one of her mail deliveries, she was attacked by a pack of wolves. And not only did she survive the attack, but she delivered the mail on time. So
Oh, wow.
really woman, and incredible to learn about.
Yeah, so it's kind of the buzzword that we've been talking about in the board gaming world: diversity, bringing in, being friendly to gamers of all stripes. Is that an important facet of this campaign and of this particular project?
It is absolutely. When we look back at, you know, we obviously we're doing, you know, Wild West, you know, historical figures, but the fact of the matter is the Wild West wasn't just a bunch of white guys with mustaches. And so, you know, you think Old West and you immediately get images of Doc Holliday and Billy the Kid, and you know, even the fictional, you know, your John Wayne, your Clint Eastwood, you know, those characters pop into mind. So we really wanted to make sure that we were focusing on characters that people maybe not may not have known about, because back in that day, you know, you had Native American characters, you had women, you had people of color. There were a lot of different races and nationalities and genders that were going on at the time. So we wanted to make sure that we included some of those characters and didn't just stick with the ones that everybody's heard of out there, and kind of give you the opportunity to not only you know, not only be inclusive and include some of these you know, these, you know, females and people of color and Native Americans in the game, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to learn about someone you may not have ever heard of, and maybe tweak that interest just enough to where, you know, you go look them up online after you're done playing the game to find out what else they did.
So the artwork obviously is just absolutely stunning. I mean, I just can't get over the artwork. Do you know? I know that art is very important to Travis. Also, you know, as a game developer, and also all that flavor. Heck, he wrote most of the cards, if I remember right, for a lot of the big games. You know, that indie boards and cards have come out. Or the Delve game that I love. I found out that he did a lot of the, you know, the background flavor for that. How
Yep,
much how much was he involved in the artwork or the art part? Because I know that's one of the things that's big in his background is art direction and art.
Yeah, he played a heavy role with the art direction. We brought on an illustrator by the name of Roland McDonald, who had done some work in the past. He did some illustration work for Stop Thief for Restoration Games. He did some work for a whole slew of things. And we basically approached him and we really liked his work. And Travis basically said, here's what we want. Showed him the designer of the game. Hervé is French, and a lot of the inspiration behind the game came out of his love for a French comic book series called Blueberry, and
Okay.
he really wanted to emulate that style in the artwork, but kind of combine that, not so much comic book style, but maybe do a little bit of watercolor look to it as well. And what you're seeing, the final result that you have with the art, is uh, pretty much all Roland. And Roland actually developed this. He basically learned how to do this on the go, something he wasn't familiar with, and he kind of developed his own style with how he wanted to do it. And he threw a couple of things back to Travis, and Travis said, "This is absolutely what we want. Let's roll with this." And you're right. The art style. I mean, just jumps off the page at you. The more I look at it, especially that box cover, the more I see that box cover, the more my mind is just blown. And I mean, I see this every day being on the Kickstarter page and moderating those comments and you know, handling social media. You know, we've got our images up all over the place, and it still blows my mind that this is our artwork on this game. Roland did an amazing job. He's incredible to work with. I would definitely say if there are publishers out there looking for an illustrator, for any titles they have upcoming. Definitely check out Roland. He's on social media as Roland the Illustrator on both Facebook and Instagram. He's fantastic to work with, and his work speaks for itself.
I mean, I looked at that box cover, and it's one of those box covers that just absolutely jumps out of the page. But then I started diving in a little deeper, and I'm throwing up a picture of the Doc Holliday. I guess it's the player card. Is that what we're looking at?
That's correct. It's the character card from Doc Holliday.
And I just love this dreamy watercolor style that we see here. It looks old, but it looks fresh. You know, I don't know how it does that, but it looks old and fresh at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that combination of, the comic book art is what makes it look fresh, but then the watercolor gives it kind of a washed out, old or Wild West feel to it. I think the coloration of the card itself, being that kind of off white color as well, really helps because it's kind of a dusty, almost wanted poster look to it.
And then I found, let me see if I can bring it up for you. I found these drawings of the weapons. And again, I mean, I'm just fascinated by this. Can you see the weapon cards that I have here?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there are what you're showing there. Those are three weapons in the game: the revolver, the shotgun, and the rifle. They are available in the base game. We actually unlocked a stretch goal that unlocks the Peacekeeper, which is not
Ooh.
in this image. And it's basically the weapons themselves all give you different abilities based on which weapon you have. You can hold multiple weapons, but at the start of your turn, you're going to select which weapon is going to be active for your turn. So some of them give you benefits when you win in a fight. They let you draw poker cards. Some of them will, if you know you're going into a fight, one of the weapons, the rifle, actually lets you look at two random cards from your opponent's hand before the fight even starts. So you can look at their hand, and if you see they've got a king and an ace, and you're holding a jack, oh, no, I'm not going to fight you. So you can back out of the fight. So having the ability to really bring these weapons, I mean, yes, they're in the game but we wanted to make them look, still have that same style, that same art, but make them look very much realistic, and just kind of bring that to the forefront, without literally just throwing a Colt 45 on there. We wanted to kind of stylize it a little bit, still make it feel like it fits in the Wild West world that we've created with the art and the graphic design. And I really think Roland did a fantastic job with that.
VJ from Board Game Gumbo here with Gumbo Live. It's a season 2, and we're kicking it off with for Mark Burke, the Chubby Meeple from Kolossal Games, talking about Western Legends. Hey, a lot of games promise a sandboxy type of game, but Western Legends
Yep.
looks like it delivers. Tell me, in your own experience, I know you've play tested this game, you've played it, you've demoed it. You were telling me before the show that you actually demoed it tonight. Do you have any examples of some game experiences that you've had where people have just, in one game they used this opportunity to win, but in another game it was completely different?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things when there are a lot of games out there that call themselves sandbox games, or I guess not a lot, but there are. I mean, you count the number of sandbox games on one hand and probably still have a couple of fingers left to count with.
Like people
And
would
those
be familiar with Zaya, right? Zaya is kind of one of the more well-known ones, I think, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people, when you hear sandbox, the first games that pop in mind are things like Merchants and Marauders,
Right.
Xia, Legend of a Drift System. Some people will classify Firefly as a sandbox. I don't know that I classify it as sandbox, but a lot of those games are more pick up and deliver style. So they give you a sandbox, world, but then essentially the best strategy is to pick up things and deliver it to another location. And so I think really what makes Western Legends different is there are a couple of pick up and deliver options in the game, but by no means are they the most powerful. The game really goes well with going wanted or going martial. Those two tracks are balanced really well with one another. But in the demo tonight, we had a player win that he was on the martial track for a little bit, but he wasn't going around and arresting wanted players. He was going to the saloon and playing poker and earning a lot of his points through playing poker because his character ability benefited him playing poker. And so he would go to the saloon, he'd play poker, and then he would win. He would take his winnings and he would use some of those winnings to just start another hand of poker. And he got a lot of points that way and ended up winning. We actually ended up, it's very balanced to the point where we had 6 players playing in tonight's demo. So we had a full complement of players, and 3 of those 6 players ended up tied at the end of the game. After all in-game scoring was factored in, we had 3 players that were tied, and we actually had to go 3 tiebreakers deep to figure out who actually won the game.
Wow.
So
Wow.
pretty incredible. experience there. And it was the first time we've ever had to go 3 tiebreakers deep. Usually the first one gets it. And so it was to the point where we actually had to pull the rules up and look at I know we've got 3 tiebreakers. What's the third one? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you have the ability. I mean, I personally have played the game. When we first were doing development, I loved going the wanted track and being the bad guy running around robbing the bank and robbing other players and just generally wreaking havoc out there. And then, here recently, I've really, I want to try my hand on the other side of the strategy. I want to see how this Marshall track plays because I was so used to playing wanted and I had kind of one way I was playing. So I jump over to the Marshall track and then now I'm chasing the wanted players and I'm arresting them with my poker cards and my guns and stuff that I've picked up and items that I've bought. And have been able to win games that way as well. We've had players stay neutral the entire game and win just on a mining strategy. Go in, prospect for gold, take those gold nuggets, deposit them in the bank for points, and kind of rinse and repeat that strategy. Now, it's risky because you're prospecting for gold. You're literally rolling dice, so you're kind of at the mercy of a die roll. And then traveling from the mine to the bank, you're at the mercy of players not robbing you and taking the gold nuggets from you before you have the chance to deposit. So there's so many paths to victory on here, and you're like I said, you're robbing the bank, you're robbing players, you're arresting wanted players, you're rustling cattle, wrangling cattle, you're playing poker, you're buying things at the general store, you're healing yourself up at the doctor's room, you're reveling at the cabaret for points and just throwing a giant party, prospecting for gold, you're taking the NPC bandits off the board at the bandit hideouts. There's so many things that you can do. And, I've seen games where players, really high player interaction in each other's face the whole time. And I've seen games where players kind of branch out and they just kind of go do their own thing and try to achieve their own goals as they're playing it out. So it's you're right. We've play tested a lot, and there have literally been no 2 games that have played out the same.
PJ from Board Game Gumbo here on Gumbo Live. I've got Mark Burke from Kolossal Games who's talking about Western Legends out on Kickstarter right now. Hey, we've talked about the gameplay and we've talked about some of the things you can do. Let's talk about the production. What I can see on the Kickstarter page, and by the way, congratulations. You guys have not only funded the first day, but oh my God, this thing is just blowing up. $387,000 already with still 5 days to go. Because, I mean, as you know, the last 2 days, that's when you're really going to get that big kicker. But let's talk about some of the production elements. I've got a picture of the game board. Can you see the game board right now?
Yep, sure can.
Yeah, tell the folks what we're looking at here on the game board.
The game board itself centers around 2 towns. Red Falls and Dark Rock are the 2 towns. And then kind of the outlying areas. So we have areas like Mosquito's Point, Sunny Hills, Cliff Junction. There's Dixon Creek, which is kind of the little valley between the 2 towns. But what you're looking at there is the original graphic design for the game or for the board was done by Brian Lee, who did a lot of graphic design. He's worked with Travis a lot in the past on Heroes Wanted. He did a lot of stuff with Action Phase and with indie boards and cards as well. He did the initial graphic design on the board, got it laid out, helped us with the spaces, and made sure that bandit camps weren't too close together, mines weren't too close to the bank, and those types of things. And then once the graphic design was done and laid out, and he did a lot of the initial illustration, we passed it over to Roland, who did the artwork on the cards, and had him basically add that same watercolor, old yet fresh look to the board so that it matched with the character cards and the art cards on the art on the poker cards as well. And so just really helping flesh out and bring this world to life and little details. I mean, when I look at this board and I see, there's a river that kind of runs through the middle of the board there, and how the majority of the board is very much, red dirt, what you think of when you think Wild West. But if you look around the river, there's greenery spaces. So, because there's water there. So the plant life is growing around, around the ranch spaces. There are 2 ranches on the board where you can wrangle and rustle the cattle from. There's greenery on those spaces because obviously your ranchers need to have, grass to feed the cattle. So, we've taken some details. If you look really close at some of the mine spaces on there, there's some of the mine spaces actually have mine carts and mine chutes that are next to them. The bandit hideouts have some caves that are kind of dug into the rock. So the attention to detail is incredible that was done. We've even gone so far as to, in the towns themselves, kind of the streets that go through the town, the little main street area has a little bit more wear and tear, if you will, than the rest of the terrain does, because it's more heavily traveled. So again, Roland and Brian did some fantastic work on that board and just kind of making that world pop off the table.
I've got some pictures of the minis going up right now. Can you see that right there?
Yep, sure can.
Yeah, tell me about those minis. It's so characters are going to pick they'll actually pick a different character, an actual historical figure, right?
Yep,
They'll
that's
have a
correct.
they'll have a mini that's related to that character, and then they'll explore that game board that you and I just looked at. Is this a final form for the minis, or are these just kind of production? I mean, I'm sorry, prototype type quality. What are we looking at?
What you're seeing in that picture that you have up there, those sculpts, the sculpts themselves are near final. There's a couple tweaks to make to them, but you're looking at the actual resin miniatures there. The miniatures in the game will actually be plastic, like your typical miniatures games are. But you're looking at resin miniatures there. Those are the sculpts, and in the game, the way the miniatures are set up is they're not character specific. So if I choose to be Billy the Kid, there's not a Billy the Kid miniature that I'm going to grab out of the box. We have
Ah,
some character specific miniatures that have been unlocked as stretch goals. So we have a character specific miniature for Wyatt Earp, one for Calamity Jane, one for Jesse James. We've got some other things coming in stretch goals that will surely going to knock out over the course of these last few days of the campaign. But the minis themselves are actually more archetypes. So we have one called the Gunslinger, one called the Gambler, and one called the Cowboy and the Gentleman. There's a Frontier Scout. So there's all these different types they're more archetypal miniatures, and they're set so you grab the miniature that you want to represent you on the board. You'll have your typical player, your colored player ring that you snap on the bottom of it to indicate, so that it
sure.
matches the player board. But yeah, those are final sculpts, and those are done by the folks over at Pure Arts. They're the same studio that did the miniatures for Kemet, Cyclades, Inish, a lot of the Matago titles out
Ah,
there. And they're one of the last studios out there that still do hand sculpted work. So they're absolutely stunning.
yeah, they are gorgeous. BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, Gumbo Live. I've got my guest Mark Burke from Kolossal Games. We're talking about Western Legends. It's out on Kickstarter right now. Mark, you guys have about 5 days left. Is that right?
That's correct. It goes through Sunday. We're shutting down at I think 11:59. So literally end of the day on Sunday, the campaign will close.
Do you guys have anything cooking for the last couple of days? Are there stretch goals that haven't been revealed yet?
There are. We have several stretch goals that are yet to be revealed. We're kind of trickling them out 3, 4 at a time as it goes. We've got, with the last batch that we revealed, there are 3 of them that have yet to be unlocked, and we'll be pushing some others out. Once those 3 get knocked off, we'll push some more out. So we're kind of keeping some things close to the vest right now, keeping it interesting, keeping it a little veil of mystery as we go into the last few days here. But I think that the backers and the folks that are getting in on the campaign are going to be really excited with what they see once we knock out these next few goals. We've got some component upgrades that we're running through now. We'll be adding new story cards because a story card mechanic that works in the game a little bit unique there. So we're unlocking new story cards to just again up the replayability and the replay value of the game. So you'll see some things going there, and then we've got a couple surprises up our sleeve still. So
Speaking of excitement and surprises, last part of the show, we always like to do something called the Envie Game. Envie is a Cajun word that's just it's sort of like a hankering or a big strong desire to do this. And in this case, the game that we play is to try to figure out what game Mark Burke has an envie to play tonight. If this show is over and you could play any game, it's a game you own, it's a game you don't own, it's a game that's out already that hasn't come out. You could have whoever you want to play with it. Don't tell us. Steve and I and whoever else is watching, we're going to ask questions and try to figure out what game it is that you want to play. It's the Envie Game.
okay, sounds good.
You have an idea for a game?
I do. Yes.
Okay, good. I'll start with the questions. I always like to narrow down because, as you know, there's only like 13,000 games out there on BGG, so this should be pretty easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is a very hard game. Steve and I don't win very often, but is it as you can imagine, it's so Envie is a Cajun word meaning what top 10 BGG game they will be reprinting. No, Steve, that's not what it means, but that's a good try. And Mark, if you're ready, if you've been texting Travis to see if it's okay, you're welcome to share that news. But let's start with the game with the first question: competitive or cooperative?
Competitive.
It's a competitive game, so it doesn't have any cooperative elements, and it's a competitive game. Okay.
Competitive.
American designer or a European designer?
Is American.
American. Does it have a board, or is it card based?
It is well, it has a board and cards, so it has both. They board games, so but there are cards involved in the gameplay.
Cards. So an American designer. Is it Ameritrash or a Euro, or is it one of the new hybrids like we like to call it, like Blood Rage?
I would say it falls more in the Ameritrash or as I've heard it referred to, Ameritreasure category.
Treasure, right? Or as Tom used to call it, that never took off. What did he call it? Amerithrash or something like that, and it just never worked.
Yeah, it never caught on.
Yeah, never caught on. Steve's got a good one. Published in the last 5 years or so, or is it older than that?
Within the last 5 years.
Well, that knocks out something I was thinking. Oh, man. I'm going to switch gears here, Steve. I was thinking of a different game there. So it is within the last 5 years. Has it won any awards?
Yes. Quite a few, actually.
Oh, man. Can it play up to 7 players?
Yes, it can.
Am I getting close?
I think so. I think you're getting close.
Steve, I think I got you on this one. You know, I did a little show prep, a little research to see games you've talked about here and there, and you and I share a love of the same game by the same designer. I'm just throwing it out there. The only 2 games I know that really play well are my buddy Chris Strain's game Asking for Troubles, and I don't think that's it. I'm going to guess.
That is a fantastic game, but that's not the one I was thinking.
Chris was on the show, and he did. I can't wait. He's coming back, by the way, in a couple of months, so I can't wait. He's really doing a lot of development work with Breaking Games. I'm stalling to see if Steve O'Rourke even has a chance. But Steve, I think I got you this time. 7-player, American designer, won tons of awards. That was the hint. That was a good hint from me. I'm gonna guess it's a game by Jamie Stegmaier.
Maybe. Can you see my?
I'm gonna go with Scythe.
That's correct.
Steve, I'm catching up to you. Steve has won this game way more than I did.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, Scythe is one of those games that anytime I have a chance to play, and I'm going to throw it on the table because it's one of those games that I enjoy. It's another one that you can play it different every time. The fact that, yes, I may be playing the same faction every time, but those player boards switch out. The focus. I think that it's probably one of my favorite games currently. Now, that being said, I've yet to play Rising Sun. I'm looking forward to that arriving later this week, in fact. So, but it's going to be hard to dethrone Scythe in my mind. I really enjoy that game a lot.
Mark, Scythe was my 2017 game of the year. It was, and the reason I picked it is not exactly for the reason that everybody else said. It's the very first thing you said. It's the one game that all year in 2017, if somebody even thought about playing it, I couldn't wait to jump in it. You know, I was so happy that we got the 7-player expansion. My buddy Bradley, part of the crew to Gumbo, has every single thing that has ever been made for Scythe absolutely tricked out. It's gorgeous on the table. He's got all the Meeple source, everything. I mean, it just looks amazing.
Nice. Has he painted the miniatures and the mechs and all of that yet?
They are not painted, and he's a painter too, and he's never gotten around to painting it. That would probably be the thing that we really need to get to do. I mean, man, I'd love to see those mechs painted. Have you played with any games that have the mechs painted?
I have, yeah. I've got a friend who, again, a painter. He paints everything. He's one of those that he'll paint it before he'll play it. It has to be painted before he'll get it to the table. If it's my copy, he'll sit down and play it. But if he's going to bring his copy to the table, the miniatures have to be painted if it's got miniatures in it. And it's just it really makes it pop when you've got those painted. And he just finished. I haven't played the new expansion, the Wind Gambit, yet with the airships, but he just finished painting his airships, and they're just absolutely gorgeous.
I was about to ask if you had any experience with it. I've only played one game with it, and I was talking to Jake from the Draft Mechanic just yesterday about it, and we've had similar experiences. The way the cards come out in our particular game, the 2 cards that you play with the Wind Gambit as one of the modules, they didn't synergize very well. So our little ships, the airships, just kind of move around, a little bit of pick up and deliver, and that's about it. And Jake was telling me about his, and the 2 cards were really good synergy, and they were able to move workers around and do a lot of attacking and all that. So I think it's one of those things where it's going to kind of depend on the cards that come out. The other part of the module, the alternate win conditions,
Yeah,
fantastic, man, fantastic.
excited about it, those alternate win conditions, because um, while you have different strategies, there are, you still have those same win conditions in the game, and I think having some new goals to strive for, I think is what really piques my interest the most. I mean, the airships look gorgeous, and the artwork that they've put into with those airships kind of floating over these old 1920s
Oh, I know.
Eastern Europe farms is just beautiful art. Jacob Brzezowski's art is just gorgeous. But I think I'm like you. I think those alternate win conditions is what's got me so excited to play it.
Well, I'm glad you picked Scythe because actually no one had picked Scythe all year, and I've been waiting for someone because I loved, as you can see, I'm passionate. I love talking about Scythe itself, and I've got Jamie Stegmeyer coming on in a couple of next month, so it's
Oh,
gonna be fun if I can pry some details about that adventure, the campaign part that's coming out for Scythe.
yes, yeah, I'm intrigued by that. I'm a little nervous about it, and I'm a little nervous about what it's going to bring to the game, but it's Scythe, so I'll try it. So I'll try to set my expectations not terribly high, just because it's going to be hard to add something new to a game that I love so much and not quote unquote break it. But if anyone can do it, Stegmeyer can do it.
Well, the Name Father's got a question for you on V 2.0. Who is the big name that they are going to be working with? The game designer that you had hinted at. Is that something that you're free to talk about tonight, or is that
No, it's
also?
still being worked out. We're still finalizing that piece, but it is definitely a big name designer. Now I can throw out this is completely unrelated. Have We do have two big name designers that we are already signed and contracted with. We've made a couple of announcements, but we signed a two-player card game designed by Tom Lehman of Race for the
Oh,
Galaxy,
sure.
Galaxy fan. We've got a two-player card game of his that's currently called Cheng Ho. Um, Fantastic, really deep strategy game there. And then we're going to be working with and have signed a game designed by Martin Wallace and Amanda Milne. So to be working with Martin Wallace is going to be fantastic. We've put that out there. There's we hadn't quite announced the name of the game yet because we hadn't quite finalized the name, but then Amanda put it in her newsletter out there. It's a game that's currently, and it may still be when it publishes, called under the title of Monster Rock. So it's kind of a fantasy world. You literally have a band of basically these fantasy characters, bards and rogues and whatnot that used to go out and kill and slay beasts of the land, and now you're slaying audiences in a rock band. So it's kind of like we kind of described, or not we didn't, but Martin kind of pitched it to us as Lord of the Rings meets Spinal Tap, or it's kind of one of those fantasy world that's almost like a Guitar Hero, set in like a Lord of the Rings style world. So there's still some dragons and some dwarves and things like that in the land, but we played it a few weeks ago and just to kind of get a feel for it, and had an absolute blast with it. So that one has been signed, has been announced, so I can freely say we're working with Martin Wallace and with Tom Lehman.
Hey, the Game Geek Ninja is checking in. Jeremy Davis, he says sold with those descriptions of that Martin Wallace game or the Tom Lehman game. I'm not sure, but I do know that he loves small box games that play quick, games with unusual themes. He's actually a librarian that does a lot of teaching. But Steve O'Rourke, I know, loves two-player card games. That is
Oh,
right up his alley, and he is super excited about that.
well, he'll be excited about Cheng Ho being a two-player card game, and then one of the first things Kolossal did, we signed the back catalog of small box games, designer John Cloudis,
Sure.
and we'll be reissuing a lot of his games through Kickstarter. The first one being Omen. So he's got Omen: Reign of War, Omen: Tales of the Aegean, which are straight two-player card games. We literally say that they are a solid game for those Magic the Gathering players that don't want to play Magic because of the competitive and the collectability nature. It's a self-contained game there, but there's two games in the tour, and part of the Kickstarter we're going to be adding a third title to the series, a brand new title called Fires in the East. Building off the existing mechanisms, but adding a couple of things to it as well, and kind of taking it out of the Greek and Roman ideologies and mythologies and taking it into Phoenician and Persian. lands, and we've got plans to add additional things down the road. So we'll take it in, over the years, we'll take it into, maybe some Egyptian gods and Aztecs, and there's even been some talk of doing Norse gods and doing the whole Viking thing with it. So who knows where that's going to end up going? But there's a lot of things there, and John does brilliant. He's designed small box games, so a lot of them are straight 2-player games. Neolithic is another one that comes to mind. A little
Sure.
Civ builder, completely brilliant. We're going to be reissuing a lot of those, and then as part of the agreement with that, John's actually designing his first ever big box game that will be coming to Kickstarter late this year, 2018, and it's called Mezzo. So it's set in like a lot of the Mayan cultures so there's some area control, you're invoking powers of the gods to wreak havoc on your opponents, and it's an absolute blast to play too. John is quickly becoming one of my favorite designers and he's going to be one of those designers that when we bring his games to a larger audience, like, which is really the goal of what we want to do, people are going to realize that this guy is brilliant with what he does. He's going to be a rock star designer. And that's really what we're looking to do. We're looking to take a lot of, lesser known or even first time designers and bring them to the forefront. I mean, the designer of Western Legends, for example, this is his first game. He spent, 10 or 12 years on it. It's a real passion project of his. So bringing those folks to light, we've got, I know a lot of people have heard the announcement, Reavers of Midgard, that's coming later this year.
Sure.
For Grey Fox. That designer, J.B. Howell, we've actually signed 2 of his games that we're working with him on. And we really think he's going to be a rock star designer here as well. I think he signed something like 7 games throughout 2017.
Wow.
Games with him. He signed a lot of games with different publishers, but we've got a big cooperative, scenario-driven game, campaign style, loaded with miniatures out there that's called No Dawn. It's a very world-spanning game. It's going to take hours and hours of development time to get that thing balanced, but we've had a lot of fun with it. And then the other game we sent from is a game called Papillon that's about it's a little area control game that uses flowers and butterflies. So other end of the spectrum, but again, another brilliant game, tile laying with some a little bit of area control and some kind of hidden goals that you're trying to achieve. So definitely, I would say be on the lookout for JB because he's going to be a rock star come 2018. He's going to be a household name, I think.
Sounds like Steve likes the plan. He says, sounds like you have a plan to make gamers grateful, revive the old, develop the new, keep up the wonderful work, he says. And I'm excited about some of these games that you guys have coming out. Fans can see them at conventions. What is your schedule and what is Kolossal's schedule for conventions in 2018? Do you know?
Yeah, we've got some things lined up already. We'll definitely be at Origins and Gen Con.
Sure.
We're in the process now of getting things booked up for Essen. Our Travis and our CEO Kira were both in Essen this past year, demoing some games there. So we're going to be back there. I imagine we'll be doing things like we'll have a presence, I'm sure, at Dice Tower Con. I imagine some of the smaller local cons. There's a local con here in Indiana called Hoosier Con. We're going to attend. A couple of us will probably go up to Grand Rapids and go to Grand Con again. We went there this past year and had a good time there. I know some other cons that we're talking about, things like Geekway to the West. We're kicking around the idea of UK Games Expo, kicking around the idea of CMON Expo. So there's a lot of things that are out there, maybe even Geek Girl Con out west. So we've got a lot of things that we're kicking around, but definitely Gen Con, Origins, BGG Con, and Essen are all absolutely without a doubt be at.
All right, board gamers, that is it for another episode of Gumbo Live. I want to thank Mark Burke, Chubby Meeple from the Dice Tower, who's also the community manager for Kolossal Games. I want to thank you for coming on. The Kickstarter for Western Legends has already started. It's got about 5 days. Where do fans need to go to reach you if they have any questions about Western Legends?
Yeah, absolutely. You can head over to the Kickstarter page itself. You just go to Kickstarter, do a search for Western Legends. It'll pop up there. If you want to hit social media, I mean, obviously, if you're sending things to Kickstarter, we can hit you with messages, comments, and get back to that. That's kind of my daily routine there. You can also hit us up on social media. We're at Kolossal Games. That's Kolossal with a K. So it's Kolossal Games, all one word, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If people want to shoot me emails, they can. It's just mark@kolossalgames.com. So feel free to shoot messages there if you have any questions. Steven, I won't spoil anything before you shoot me an email and ask what top game we're working on. I'll save your fingers the trouble.
You know what I like about your social media presence is that Kolossal Games not only features obviously talk about their games and the things that they're signing, but you just seem like passionate gamers because you're always talking about other people's games, and there's not too many companies that do that.
Yeah, I kind of adopted or kind of borrowed the phrase that I heard James Hudson from Druid City Games mention. I heard him say once that a rising tide raises all ships, and
Right.
that's absolutely brilliant, and it's true. And so I feel like, and especially in the board game community, yes, we're all different publishers, and we're all trying to sell our own products, but at the same time, we're a community. And a lot of people from a lot of publishers, you have people that are that own and run one publishing company that their best friend is a president or a community manager or a CEO of some other publishing company. So we really are all in this together, and I think it does us justice to for us to go out and say, hey, check out this game that we played this week. And it's not our thing. We sat down and played a Renegade title or a Gamelin Games title or something this weekend, and throwing those pictures up on social media because you're absolutely right. We're avid gamers. We're passionate about the hobby and the community, and while we love our games, sometimes we want to step out and we play something else. We need to stay in touch with the community. And if we just kind of put ourselves in a corner and only focus on our own titles and what we're publishing and developing and designing, I feel like we'd fall out of touch with a lot of what's out there and keeping up to date on what gamers are actually playing and what they actually want.
Steve O'Rourke has the last words. He says, don't fight over your piece of the pie, grow the pie. And Jeremy says, the Game Geek Ninja says, that's why I love this community. And that's why I love it, Mark. I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. I had a great time with you here. I really want to tell you guys good luck with the Kickstarter project with Western Legends. Hey, fans, make sure to like our Facebook, facebook.com/BoardGameGumbo. It helps us to get the word out about upcoming guests and shows, get people on here. Next week, we've got Mark Burke from the Dice Tower. You know him well, the Podfather, Stephen Bonacore, in a rare appearance on a podcast or video show. He hates publicity, but he's coming.
He's not a limelight guy at all.
Right. And he's coming on next week. I can't wait to talk to him. I actually demoed for him this summer at Dice Tower Con, and I got to chat with him again at Gen Con. So it's going to be great visiting with Stephen. Hey, I'm BJ from Board Game Gumbo. This has been another episode of Gumbo Live with Mark Burke. And until next time, Mark, laissez le bon temps rouler.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot, BJ. I've had a great time tonight.
We'll see you later, man.